let's talk about getting the most out of the forces of the greater good in 9th edition Warhammer 40k. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where today we're looking at the forces of the Tau Empire and talking about some of their strongest combinations and options in 9th. The Tau have had quite a hard time of it in 9th so far. They still certainly do have some strong options of their own, but they certainly remain one of the most challenging armies to play. This is kind of underlined by their tournament performance. They've still never won a single grand tournament in 9th yet, and have only had 2 placings, though both of those were at least relatively recently. In the video we'll have a bit of a talk about the challenges of Tau in 9th, go over a few of their strongest rules from the codex, look at some of the strongest units to apply those rules to, and then finish up by looking at 2 Tau tournament lists, the ones by Ben Neal and Richard Siegler, to see how they put them all together. So towards the start of 9th edition, when the rules were coming out, it was interesting just to see how many people were unhappy about Tau. There were quite a lot of people posting in comments and things as the army that gets to keep army-wide Overwatch when no one else does. Obviously things have not transpired that way, and despite some small advantages like that, generally the missions and the feel of the edition has been very bad news for the Tau. They don't really have any truly efficient melee units in a melee-heavy edition, melee close combat being favoured by smaller boards, less room to run away and hide at the back of your deployment zone, far heavier terrain, with both dense and obscuring cover being really quite relevant for Tau, and helping keep moving up units safe from their firepower, and perhaps above all the need to fight for centreboard objectives with durable and hard-hitting units, which really puts close combat forces in their element as they're able just to jump onto those objectives and dare the Tau to come near to take them off them. As well as this, the 5-turn game didn't help Tau either. It gives shooting armies like them just 1 turn fewer to clear the enemy off all the objectives and then score uncontested, in stark contrast to 8th edition Tau, where you could often hoover all the important units off the board and then jump forward in the last few turns and just mop up any straggling survivors. As well as all this, fall back and shoot with fly units was removed from the game. Bad news for their riptides and vehicles, but absolutely horrendous news for their crisis suits. A lot of the Tau units just aren't all that efficient in points anyway. Drones were heavily nerfed, with shield drones going all the way up to 20 points, and it feels like quite a lot of these gaping flaws aren't going to be addressed until they get a 9th edition codex, which there is currently no real sign of yet. So certainly Tau have a lot of challenges to them, but it's often fun to make a slightly underperforming army work, and a good player with a solid list can still have some success, as these recent tournament results would attest to. So let's have a talk about some of the strongest things that Tau have to offer. First up, of course, they have some of their core faction mechanics, their For the Greater Good style Overwatch, and their marker lights. To be honest, with the durability of quite a lot of units in the game now, it just doesn't really seem like Overwatch is as big of a strategy that you can just build your entire list around. Triple Riptide and Broadside lists in the past could often just castle up and basically be kind of immune to charging, knowing they could near enough destroy virtually anything that tried to make contact with the firebase. Unfortunately, the big static Tau castle just doesn't really seem to be very efficient in 9th. I think it's certainly still one way that you can play the faction, maybe building around Shadow Sun and the Tau Sept, but at the moment it just doesn't seem as popular or successful as the Farsight Enclave approach. Marker lights, one of the other big faction mechanics, still do seem helpful, but again maybe aren't quite built around quite as much as they used to be. The most helpful options are literally just getting 1 marker light on the target for reroll 1s to hit, ignoring light cover with 3 when it's relevant, but perhaps more importantly getting 5 or more marker lights on there for the +1 to hit. It's really nice if you do need to focus down 1 key target, but you do have to commit quite a lot of investment to get that many marker lights on the thing that you need to shoot, and it's not really going to be very efficient against any sort of multiple small unit approach by enemies. In general, it seems to be handy to have some marker lights present, though not go absolutely mad on them. For commander abilities, while Kaiyum was usually the favoured one in 8th, Mont'ka has really come into its own in 9th edition, particularly since Games Workshop have officially clarified with that FAQ that the counting as stationary ability with Mont'ka does indeed mean that you can now drop back Tau units and fire to full effect when they're within 6 inches of the commander. When the 9th movement phase rules came out, it did kind of imply that that was the case anyway, though it was a hefty change to how the rule worked, and I think it did need an FAQ really. In any case, it's a really powerful buff to a shooting faction without other ways to fall back and shoot, and it's a massive draw to Commander Farsight in particular, who can use it twice. Talking of which, competitive Tau really seem to be centering themselves around the Farsight enclaves these days, entirely due to all the options that they gained from the Greater Good book. Their Septenet itself got boosted, so you can potentially have reroll 1s to hit and wound when you're right up close. Farsight himself is a real draw, having a little bit of melee and being able to use Mont'ka twice. Extra commanders within the same detachment are always really handy. They're one of the best units, and it's annoying to have them artificially limited. And then they have a fair few really helpful stratagems as well. Veteran Cardo, which makes the Crisis Bodyguard unit truly efficient. Hitting on 3s is really nice for a tower unit. Danger Close for a bit more firepower out of breaches. And the pretty nice defense in numbers stratagem that can give you a 5+ feel no pain, again on a big unit of Crisis Bodyguards. The Enclaves do just seem to stand head and shoulders above the rest. I still think that the Tower Seps could have some value if played right, but it does encourage you to be a lot more static and less aggressive. Otherwise, Viola also has its merits, and perhaps some of the custom Sept tenets if you're really looking to just amp up certain pieces of war gear to the max. The Tower Warlord traits and relics have never been particularly overwhelming. Through Unity Devastation has remained the most common pick. That's the one where you get a little bit of extra AP on 6s to wound, and it's generally a nice shooting buff to layer on with all the rest. And for relics, the Pure Tide Engram Neuro chip is a good way to get a few more CP, though it is quite tempting to trade that out just for more prototype weapon systems from that Psychic Awakening Greater Good book. Of these, perhaps the most powerful is the Amplified Ion Accelerator for the Riptide. The benefit of this one is twofold really. It's a big heavy 6 ion accelerator with strength 9, AP-4 and D3+3 damage, so that's already a significant upgrade on what the ion accelerator can do without it. But what's even better is that you don't have to Nova Charge to use it, so you can use that Nova Charge to give you a 3+ invul save too. It makes the Riptide just an incredibly efficient unit, decent anti-tank damage output, and with a 3+ invul save on an enormous model, it's not going to get shot down too fast. Another strong one is the Reactive Countermeasures, a good defensive one that you can put on a big Farsight Enclave's Crisis Bomb. You need to use it on a model with an air-bursting fragmentation projector, and it'd pair very nicely with an Iridium battlesuit and a shield generator too, and it counts all AP-1 and AP-2 weapons as AP-0, so you can potentially tank a whole ton of wounds on a 2+ armor save. Can make the squad tougher by having just one really hard model to remove within it. Finally, maybe out of the rest, the Magna Rail Rifles for the broadsides are kind of interesting. They make the Rail Rifle strength 9 and a minimum of damage 3, which can be quite handy against any 3-wound infantry that are about. We've mentioned a few of these already, but let's talk through some of the strongest units for Tau at the moment. Of course, there's Farsight with his double Montcar and some melee threat too. At strength 8, AP-4 and damage D3. The Dawnblade does make him one of the Tau Empire's best combatants, and he might be alright for finishing off a small enemy unit. Commanders remain pretty efficient as well. They've got 4 slots for weapons or support systems, a nice ballistic skill of 2+, and the Cold Star Commander in particular can be a really handy unit to have around, jumping around crazy distances, being able to get line of sight on units that thought they were hidden, or perhaps being able to jump on an objective to contest it at a crucial moment. For troops, 9th edition seems to be the addition of the Breacher Squad. They're a cheap unit for OBSEC undoing actions, and for the points they pack a fair amount of punch with those pulse blasters when they're up close, and they do have a couple of handy strats for damage output, such as Farsight Enclaves being able to fire twice, or to get their close range ability to a higher range, with one of the stratagems from the Greater Good. They work pretty well with Devilfish, and a unit of these with some gun drones and a Devilfish makes them a really annoying unit to try and put on an objective. It means even if the opponent invests in killing the Devilfish, will then also have to deal with the annoying gun drones and breacher team that piles out, and that might be enough to allow them to survive till the following turn. We already mentioned the Crisis Bodyguard bomb, but it seems to be one of the single scariest things that Tau players can put down at the moment. Run them in Farsight Enclaves, give them Veteran Carder for the 3+ ballistic skill, use one with Reactive Countermeasures for the -1 AP ignoring, have a few with Iridium battlesuits and maybe even shield generators, then load up the unit with as many fusion blasters, cyclic ion blasters or missile pods as you can. They can be a very efficient damage dealer between that ballistic skill 3+, the re-rolls from Farsight Enclaves, and they can be safe knowing they can fall back and shoot with Montcar, and if it looks like there's going to be a turn where they're going to get focused down, you can use a 5+ feel no pain stratagem on them to try and shrug off some wounds. With the way that actions work in 9th, Vespid have come into their own, not really as damage dealers, but they can deep strike and they're a very cheap unit, so dropping into table quarters and doing some actions is handy. Remora stealth drones seem popular at the moment. These Forge World mini flyer units are extremely fast, can lay down a little bit of burst cannon shots exactly where you need it, maybe hitting units that were out of line of sight, and can be quite handy for scoring some secondaries like engage on all fronts. Finally, we've already talked a fair bit about the Riptide with the Amplified Ion Accelerator. 3+ invul and great range damage is a nice combo. So finally, let's finish off by talking about the 2 lists that have done well in Grand Tournaments in 9th edition. This first and most recent one by Richard Siegler, who took 4th at the enormous Atlantic City Open tournament, and getting into the top 4 there with Tau was no mean feat. He went with a single Farsight Enclave detachment led by Commander Farsight and a Cold Star Commander, the Cold Star Commander taking 3 missile pods, an ATS for AP-2, and is the Warlord with through Unity Devastation. He also has a single attached marker drone, like quite a few units in the list. So many drones in individual units will be quite annoying to remove, and if you don't take them down, then they can tank some of the highest damage shots that come in. The commander will be buffing a huge unit of Crisis Bodyguards, 3 have Iridium battlesuits, and 1 takes the air-bursting fragmentation projector with reactive countermeasures. They have a veteran Carder for hitting on 3s, and aside for that 1 suit for tanking, the rest are all loaded up with missile pods and advanced targeting systems for an absolute barrage of Strength 7 AP-2 firepower that might go up to AP-3 with the Warlord trait. Not a bad countermeasure option perhaps for taking out things like Drakari Raiders. There is of course the big Riptide with the amplified ion accelerator. He also takes fusion blasters, a drone controller, and a velocity tracker to give a bit more damage against fly units. He could potentially make the marker drones a bit more accurate as well by having that drone controller nearby and on a very durable unit. He also takes a couple of shielded missile drones just in case we didn't have quite enough Strength 7 firepower already. Aside from those 2 massive damage dealers and the characters, most of the rest of the list is about actions and objectives. There's 5 units of 5 breachers, most of which will be piling into 2 devilfish with gun drones, and could be some good sacrificial units to try and take the midfield objectives early on in the game. Again, 4 of those have individual marker drones. Finally, to round it off, there's 1 unit of Pathfinders for some marker light support. They also take a recon drone and a grav inhibitor drone. The grav inhibitor one in particular is quite handy. Subtracting D3 from an enemy charge at a crucial moment could be make or break. There's some Vespid for doing some deep strike actions, and a couple of those fast Remora stealth drones in the flyer slots, able to zoom all over the board and apply some close range burst cannon fire with a bit of extra damage output from being Farsight Enclaves. Overall, it is of course a really well designed list, and was played by one of the world's best Tau players to an absolutely spectacular result. Lots of annoying units for scoring objectives and getting in the opponent's way, and 2 big damage dealers that are incredibly painful to try and take out directly. The other list, which I have featured on the channel once before, was Ben Neal's Tau list that came second at the Olympus Games GT. He ran both Farsight Enclaves and Viola in 2 patrol detachments, and in particular quite a lot of the Farsight Enclave units are the same. A few differences are no Cold Star Commander, instead he's got an XV8 one with 3 cyclic ion blasters and ATS. The main bomb contains quite a lot of air-bursting fragmentation projectors, no less than 5 suits, and then 4 with triple fusion blasters for some massive up-close damage. Again there's breaches with Devilfish, Remora stealth drones, and the Riptide with the ion accelerator. The Viola patrol seems to be there to get their hands on an ethereal, for which he's gone for Orn Shi, the unique Viola ethereal, who's basically just a more efficient ethereal. He gets a pretty nice 4+ invul save from a shield generator, and packs a little bit of punch in melee, where he's also able to re-roll those invul saves, so it's actually kind of hard to kill in combat. Another draw to Viola are the breachers in the Devilfish. There's a big unit of 10 of them, and they're able to fire their fairly hard-hitting pulse blasters twice with a 2 CP stratagem from Viola, which could make short work of some enemy infantry units. Finally, there's an additional unit of Stingwings to help with objectives and things. It's quite fun to see the subtle differences between the 2 lists, but the sheer amount of overlap of the most efficient units does really imply that Farsight Enclaves are the way to go. So as always, let me know if you have any other insights, particularly any other choices for competitive Tau that I've glossed over in the video. I'm sure there's at least a fair amount of other good stuff out there. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new content coming out pretty much every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics has a Patreon page, which is how I can afford to make so many videos quite so often. If you are enjoying regularly, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel backers do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry to the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.